Let me say to this one, he seems a little less patient. He says that after the first mistrial ruling, 2 days before, he went into his chambers and he read every decision he had made about the case. He took this moment to reflect on the first decision, and he found that he had, in his own estimation, which is all he has, been fair and not allowed evidence that was prejudicial to Trump into this trial. It could continue. And so he said that again, and then he really almost turned on the defense, and he said that the things that the defense was objecting to were things that the defense had made happen.
How so?
He says that in their opening statement, the defense could have taken issue with many elements of the case, about whether there were falsified business records, about any of the other things that prosecutors are saying happened. But instead, he says, they focused their energy on denying that Trump ever had sex with Daniels. And so that was essentially an invitation to the prosecution to call Stormy Daniels as a witness and have her say from the stand, yes, I had this sexual encounter. The upshot of it is that the judge not only takes the defense to task, but he also just says that he finds Stormy Daniels' narrative credible. He doesn't see it as having changed so much from year to year.
Interesting. So, in thinking back to our original question here, Jonah, about the idea that putting Stormy Daniels on the stand was risky, I wonder if by the end of this entire journey, you're reevaluating that idea. Because it doesn't sound like it ended up being super risky. It sounded like it ended up working reasonably well for the prosecution.
Well, let me just assert that it doesn't really matter what I think. The jury is going to decide this. There's 12 people and we can't know what they're thinking. But my impression was that while she was being questioned by the prosecution for the prosecution's case, Stormy Daniels was a real liability. She was a difficult witness for them, and the judge said as much.
Right.
But when the defense cross-examined her, Stormy Daniels became a better witness, in part because their struggles to discredit her may have actually ended up making her story look more credible and stronger. And the reason that matters is because, remember, we said that prosecutors are trying to fill this hole in their case. Well, now they have. The jury has met Stormy Daniels, they've heard her account, they've made of it what they will, and now the sequence of events that prosecutors are trying to line up as they seek prison time for the former president really makes a lot of sense. It starts with what Stormy Daniels says with sex in a hotel suite in 2006. It picks up years later as Donald Trump is trying to win an election, and prosecutors say suppressing negative stories, including Stormy Daniels' very negative story. And the story that prosecutors are telling ends with Donald Trump orchestrating the falsification of business records to keep that story concealed.
Well, Jonah, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Of course, thanks for having me.
The prosecution's next major witness will be Michael Cohen, the former Trump fixer who arranged for the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Cohen is expected to take the stand on Monday. We'll be right back.
You want control of your financial future. That's why when it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices. Like full-service wealth management and advice when you need it most. You can also invest on your own and trade on Thinkorswim, the powerful award-winning trading platform. Plus, you'll get low costs, transparent pricing, and 24/7 live help. Because Schwab understands it's your financial journey, and they believe you should have choices in how you invest. Visit schwab.com to learn more.
Here's what else you need to know today. On Thursday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a defiant response to warnings from the United States that it would stop supplying weapons to Israel if Israel invades the southern Gaza city of Rafah. So far, Israel has carried out a limited incursion into the city where 1 million civilians are sheltered, but has threatened a full invasion. In a statement, Netanyahu said, quote, "If we need to stand alone, we will stand alone." Meanwhile, high-level ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas have been put on hold, in part because of anger over Israel's incursion into Rafah. A reminder, tomorrow we'll be sharing the latest episode of our colleague's new show, The Interview. This week on The Interview, Lulu Garcia-Navarro talks with radio host Charlemagne the God about his frustrations with how Americans talk about politics.
If me as a black man, if I criticize Democrats, then I'm supporting MAGA. But if I criticize, Donald Trump and Republicans, then I'm a Democratic shill. Why can't I just be a person who deals in nuance?
Today's episode was produced by Olivia Nat and Michael Simon Johnson. It was edited by Lexi Diao with help from Paige Cowett. Contains original music by Will Reed and Marian Lozano, and was engineered by Alyssa Moxley. Our theme music is by Jim Rundberg and Ben Landsberg of Wonderly. That's it for the Daily. I'm Rico Barbaro. See you on Monday.
At Saks.com, it's easy to find your new vibe. You can go full 90s throwback with platforms from Prada, or try out the Western trend with denim from Frame. You can shop Saks.com for everything on your agenda, whether it's a bright Amiri blazer for a garden party or a new Chloe carryall for your commute. Find inspiration for your new vibe every day at Saks.com. Support for Criminal comes from BetterHelp. If you've been thinking about trying therapy, BetterHelp offers a convenient, affordable way to get started. It's entirely online and flexible enough to fit into any schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, ready to help with whatever is going on. Work deadlines, medical issues, tension with your partner or with a friend, things happen and stress is inevitable. But how you deal with it is up to you. BetterHelp Online Therapy offers a safe space to work through life's challenges. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/criminal today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/criminal. Support for Criminal comes from Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, and even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who switch to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Travell, how are you?
I'm well. I'm very grateful, and I'm happy to be talking to you on this side.
On this side. How long have you been out?
Well, today it will be like a little under a month. Thursday will be a full month, a full 4 weeks.
Last month, Travell Coleman was released from prison after nearly 14 years. We first met him at Fishkill Correctional Facility last summer. In 1993, when he was 18 years old, he shot a man 3 times in Harlem.
And I didn't plan on actually doing anything. I just had a gun, and I was riding around, and I happened to see a guy, you know what I mean, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I could just rob this guy,
Travell rode away on his bicycle without knowing what had happened to the man. For years and years, he didn't tell anyone about that night. The police never suspected him. We shared Travell's story in 2 episodes we released last fall. They're called The Confession, Part 1 and 2. Travell told us that he always thought about the man he'd shot, And 17 years after the shooting, Travell walked into a police station and turned himself in. He was 36.
I started thinking about it more and more. I'm like, well, look, like, if anything did happen, that would be, I just felt like that was the only way, I can resolve it. You know what I mean? Like, and I just thought about, well, if I turn myself in, I can find out what happened to him, and if something did happen, then here we go. You know what I mean? And then I can kind of move on, whatever happens after that.
Because you didn't know if he was alive or dead.
No, I didn't know. After a while, I told myself he was all right, but I still didn't know. I didn't know for sure.
Did it get to a point where, even though if he had died, you knew that you would be going to prison for a very long time, it didn't matter anymore?
Nah, it didn't matter. It was like, it is what it is at that point. That's how I looked at it. Like, whatever happens, this is it.
After he turned himself in, he learned that the man he had shot had died. His name was John Henkel. Travell Coleman was sentenced to prison, 15 years to life. Travell's lawyer, Steve Zeidman.
I've heard of people turning themselves in, but it's soon thereafter the crime. Or it's somebody who knows law enforcement isn't looking for them. What makes this entirely unique is that Travell was never a suspect in the first place. So no, I've never experienced anything like someone coming forward 17 years after the fact. So no, this is absolutely extraordinary.
When we last spoke with Travell and Steve, they had submitted a clemency application and were waiting to hear from the governor's office. And then, in December of last year, Steve got a phone call.
Getting that call from the governor, from my perspective, it's hard to put in words because clemency is so rarely granted, even in as compelling a case as Travell's. So when the call comes, there have been times they've actually said to me, take a seat. We have some good news for you. This was one of those moments.
Travell was being granted clemency.
That feeling right there was probably more concentrating than actually getting out, because at that point, we were anticipating, something good happening, but then again, you have these doubts, like maybe not, you don't know, you know what I mean? So it was kind of like kind of a roller coaster of emotions that I was going through at that time, and so it was like a weight was lifted type of thing, you know what I mean?
The governor has the power to commute a sentence and basically say you're going home tomorrow. Or they can do what they did in Travell's case. They can say we're reducing your sentence to make you immediately eligible to see the parole board. So I was thrilled to hear the news that clemency was granted. I was not so happy to hear that he wasn't immediately going home because the parole board is never, you can't guarantee that.
Tell me a little bit about what you heard that clemency was going to be granted, and then you were going to have to go in front of the parole board. What did you have to do to prepare to go in front of the parole board? Was that meetings between both of you? Kind of, what are we going to say? What's our case here?
Yeah, the process of preparing for the parole board, it's pretty daunting. Travell and I met, we talked about the interview, we exchanged a lot of emails about what to expect. What are the trickier questions? What are the hard questions? How do you respond? I know Travell on the inside, working with peers. There was a parole preparation workshop run by the men inside. But it's gathering materials to get to the board to make the best case possible, keeping your fingers crossed that you don't get some of the parole board commissioners who are unlikely to release anybody, frankly. But once you get a parole board date, it's just a matter of chance about who are going to be the parole commissioners. And remember, this is on video, it's not in person. There's supposed to be 3 parole board members, often there are just 2. And not a lot of notice about who's going to be in front. So you can only prepare so much. From my perspective, I prepare for the worst. And by the worst, I mean the commissioners who are going to ask, frankly, what I think are ridiculous questions. Why do you deserve parole? What would you say to the victim's family? Those sorts of questions, which there really is no good answer as far as they're concerned. So you try and prepare, you go through every possible permutation, and then
trying to make sure that Travell feels as ready as he possibly can.
I'm Phoebe Judge. This is Criminal. And are you thinking the whole time, if this doesn't go well?
Gorgeous. It's like 75 degrees or something in Hamilton.
We've got one shot here.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you say that. When Travell got clemency and was made immediately eligible to see the parole board, there are a bunch of folks saying, well, the governor gave him clemency, of course the parole board is going to, you know, grant release, which to me is like, that anybody would just assume that is a little frightening. So you see the board, if you're denied, they can set your next interview 2 years down the road. If you're denied then, they can set your next interview 2 years after that. So the stakes remain real high.
So it's not as though, okay, we'll be back next week.
Correct.
We'll take another number, we'll wait. It's years, potentially, of life.
There have been people who've been denied parole 10, 12, 14 times. One of the first people I ever worked with was in 44 years on a 25 to life sentence. He'd been denied parole 14 times.
The day of the parole hearing, Travell was brought to a building at Fishkill. The parole hearing would take place over a video call. While you were waiting to be called, were you with other people who were going up against the parole board that day?
Yeah. Well, yes, it was about 10 of us.
Did you talk beforehand?
Yeah, we talked. It was, you know, a lot of it was nervous chatter, you know what I'm saying? We were just consoling each other, not consoling each other, but just, you know, kind of helping each other get through it. Yo, man, you know, don't worry about it. You know, oh, you should be all right. You know, one of those things. Yo, look, how long you been in? Oh, man, don't worry about it. You know, stuff like that. And, you know, it was a couple of guys there that I actually knew, that I actually worked with. So we sat there and talked, you know.
How does it actually work? I mean, Travell, what happened during the hearing? Steve, you were there on Zoom, or?
No, you can't have anybody present. Travell's
just
there
you and
on his own.
I was just there. I was you go in a room, and you sit down, and you right in front of like a TV, probably about that big, and then the people pop up, and they pan around, and they introduce everybody, and then they usually have one central person to ask all the questions.
Were you nervous?
Yeah, I was nervous because, you know, I mean, it was just intimidating. I never experienced anything like that, you know. I didn't know if I was gonna say the wrong thing. I didn't know the temperature of, you know, how those things work. You know what I mean?
Do you remember the first thing they asked you?
I think the first thing they asked me was, how do I see? Like, how do I think I'm different now? I think that was one of the first questions, because when I first sat down, they just kind of just ran down everything. Like, they were told you. You know what I mean? They didn't like ask me anything. They just like, oh, okay, you just know Travell Coleman, and is that correct? You know, I think that was the first question to me. You know what I'm saying? I was like, yes. And then they started, so you committed this crime this day and this and that. And then they started when they went on and on. But then, you know, that was the first question. They said, so how do you think you're different now?
Do you remember what you said?
I mean, I just told them that I was a follower back then, you know, and, you know, I've learned to be more of an individual these days. And I understand that I had to have a more righteous direction in order to live, you know, unlike, you know, I was living, you know what I mean? And I understood that.
Travell told them about what he would do if he got out. He wanted to get a job and work on his music. When it was over, how did you feel like it went? Were you still nervous?
I was nervous because I wasn't nervous. I was uncertain. I didn't know, you know, at that point, you don't know. They don't give you any indication of what they're gonna do. Like, they just, okay, you know, all right, good. Thanks for coming today. And I saw, you know, I knew a couple of guys that went in there, and, you know, it seemed like they did well. You know what I mean? And then they wound up, you know, telling me later, like, yo, man, I didn't make it. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know what to think. You know what I mean? I was like, you know, all I could do was wonder. But the only thing that did help me get through those long 7 days, they said, we'll be getting back to you early next week. And this was maybe a Wednesday. She said, we'll be getting back to you early next week. So, you know, the first thing I thought, Monday, I should have an answer, you know what I mean? So that's what kind of helped me get through the weekend. I said, okay, Monday.
We'll be right back. Support for Criminal comes from Ritual. A daily multivitamin can help make sure you're getting the nutrients you need to keep your body and mind in shape. I've been taking Ritual's Essential for Women every day for months. I started it when we were heading out on tour, and I knew I'd be burning the candle at both ends. And now that the tour is over, I'm still taking them. I like that they smell like mint, when so many vitamins are gigantic and smell bad, and I like that you don't have to take them with food. Ritual's Essential for Women includes 9 key nutrients that work to support your brain, bones, and red blood cells. Ritual is also USP verified. That just means that the ingredients listed on the bottle match what's inside, so you know exactly what you're putting in your body. Ritual's Essential for Women 18 Plus is a multivitamin you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first one at ritual.com/criminal. Start Ritual or add Essential for Women 18 Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/criminal for 25% off. Support for Criminal comes from Etsy. Everyone loves getting a great gift, but coming up with the perfect gift idea can be a drag. If you're having trouble finding that perfect item, you might want to try out Gift Mode on Etsy. Gift Mode on Etsy can take the stress out of giving by providing curated gift ideas based on personas. Just tap or click Gift Mode on your Etsy app or at Etsy.com and then answer a few short questions about who you're shopping for and what they like. For your sister, the rock climber, you might find some jewelry made with tiny carabiners. Or for your neighbor, the chef, you might find a monogrammed charcuterie board. Whether you're looking for a birthday present, housewarming gift, or just a little something for someone special, Etsy makes it simple to find gifts made by independent sellers. The search might even help you become a more creative gift giver, unlocking new gift ideas you would never have thought of. Need to find the perfect gift? Don't panic. Try Gift Mode on Etsy now. Steve, you knew the day that Travell was going up against the board. Were you, differently of course, but in the same way, thinking, what's going to happen, kind of on pins and needles?
Very nervous, very anxious. And the thing about it too is, a case like Travell's, because of who he is and the high-profile nature, that adds an extra element of concern. Because ultimately, whether it's the governor or the parole board, they know that their decision is going to be public. Right? It's going to be scrutinized. It's going to be in the media. And in the back of my mind, I just kept being fearful that somehow that was going to tip the scale in the wrong way.
Were you trying to be positive, though, to Travell? Were you trying to not let your quiet fears show?
Yeah, always. Remember the last time we saw each other, just saying, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but you got this. He had the answers to every question. We really didn't need to even prepare that much. And it's also the way people come across, and I know that that's subjective for all of us, but some people come across as just thoughtful, mature, humble. And to me, that matters to the parole board. Whether it should or not is a whole other thing, but confident, and trying to convey confidence and keep some of my own fears to myself. Just because with each passing day, there are two ways to think about it. You're thinking, okay, with each passing day, is that good or bad? There was a way in which I was hoping, okay, this was Wednesday, Friday, they should just let you know Friday you got parole. And then when we didn't hear Friday, that kind of made me a little concerned.
Travell, did everyone know that you had gone up against the parole board? Your friends, was everyone kind of waiting along with you to hear what was going to happen? Inside, not outside. Of course outside, but
or inside. Just the people that I dealt with, like the people in my unit. It's kind of a big thing when you go to the parole when you're inside, because everybody knows with time it's a certain week when everybody goes to parole. So, I ran into a couple people while I was walking over there, so people know that you're going to parole. So.
Did the guards know? Did you speak to any of the guards about what was happening?
Yeah, some of them. Like I said, there's really no secrets in prison. And even the guards, oh yeah, I heard you went to parole the other day. Good luck, stuff like that. They were mostly supportive.
On the Tuesday after his parole hearing, April 2nd, Travell was called into an office at Fishkill. And you didn't know when they just said, come down. You had no idea. It could have been.
Yeah, it could have been bad. So the thing is, it's true though. Now I know it's not really a legend. You know what I mean? They in prison they said you get when you go in the office, if you get a small envelope, if the envelope is really, really thin, if you see it and they hand you that, then you'll probably be coming home. You know what I mean? But if you get a thick envelope, that means it has all your stipulations, the reason why they denied you and all of this stuff in there. So if you see a thick envelope, like, you kind of like understand what's getting ready to happen, you know? And I kind of saw some on the desk, you know, so I'm like, oh, I didn't know which one was mine, you know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, man. So then I sat down, and then the lady, she said, she like reached over and looked at my envelope, was like super thin. Like, I was like, wait a minute, this might be good right here, you know? So I opened it, and, you know, and at first I really didn't know what I was reading. She said, all right, go to the second page. And I went looking, you know, I expected it to have, like, you know, bold letters, like, approved. Like, alright, so I was like, you know, so I just like was looking, and all I saw was the date. And I saw the date, so I looked at the date, and I really couldn't believe what I was reading. I was like, how come it say 4/29/24? And she was like, well, if that's what it says, you made it. She was, you know, according to her, she didn't know what the result was, you know. But she said, well, that means you made it, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, really? So I was like, wow. I said, praise the Creator. And she said, yeah, I mean, you know, you made some good decisions, you know. So congratulations.
What was that walk back to your unit like?
Just talking about it, it's like I got a little jump, you know, butterfly, and you know, it was a feeling, it was just so liberating. Like, you know, I was able to walk and look at, you know, in Fishkill you could look at the highway when you're walking by, and just, it was like, wow, you know what I mean? But the funny thing about jail is, unless you're walking out the gate, you still, like, you know, I mean, I'm still in jail, you know. The only thing that was going through my mind was like, I still have to wait 25 more days, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay.
The part that then became a little sticky, and this is where corrections and government officials can be a little cavalier about time, because they had the release date wrong.
Technically, Travell was eligible for immediate release, but that's not what the paperwork said.
And to try and get someone to pay attention, because their first response is, hey, the guy got parole.
Good enough.
This is great. He's going home within a couple weeks. Everything is good. What do you need us to look into?
So it wasn't done yet. You saw that and said, okay, well, now we have to fix this.
It's not, you know, it's from my perspective, and this is an outsider looking in, it's not done until you walk out the gate. You know, I tell family members, don't exhale completely. Clemency is beautiful, celebrate, but we're not there yet. The parole board, the interview, looks like it went well. Not there. And even when you get the letter saying you're going home, until you walk out,
Yeah, basically.
then you can exhale, then you can fully celebrate.
You know, that day, everybody that went to the parole board, you know, I saw them, we were all going, they all called us all at the same time, so people were, you know, coming from wherever they were coming from, but you saw them with their papers in their hands. Some of them were looking sad, some of them were, you know, you could tell that they made it, you know what I mean? So for me, when I got back, you know, I was overjoyed, you know what I mean? But then, so when I got back, Steve, my daughter, and my wife, the first three people I emailed, boom, emailed them, sent it out, and then I called my mother, and I said, and she told me, she said, look, if you get parole, don't call me and say, you know, get this long drawn out thing and just try to, you know, hey, look, Ma, I got, you know.
Say it quick.
And she said, say it quickly, like, just call me and just say, I'm coming home, you know what I mean? So when I called her, that's exactly what I did, you know. I said, Ma, I said, she picked the phone up, and she knew something was up because I don't usually call her before 11:30, you know, and this was like, it was about 9:30-ish, like, you know, so I called her, and she said, what's going on? I said, Ma, and I was getting ready to draw it out too, and then I was like, oh, I remember what she said. I said, I'm coming home, and she just was like, oh, she just screamed so loud. I was like, oh, man, we just laughed and just, you know, it was just a joyous occasion, man.
We'll be right back. Thanks to Progressive for their support. While you're listening to the show, maybe you're also doing something else. Driving, dishes, folding laundry. I listen when I go on walks. If you're not currently driving a car, you could also be getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. Save money right now from your phone. Drivers who switch to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. You can get a quote for your car insurance at Progressive.com to join over the 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
This episode is brought to you by Azo. Ever felt off balance down there? Introducing Azo Vaginal Health Products. Azo Complete Feminine Balance helps restore the balance of good bacteria. And if you want protection from yeast and urinary tract issues, try Azo Dual Protection. Save 20% with the promo code PODCAST at azoproducts.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Everything was lined up for Travell's release on April 29th.
You know, I'm like, okay, I'm mentally preparing for a whole month. I'm like, okay, I got a little time to get myself together and stuff like that. April 2nd, I never forget, in the morning, they called me and said, yo, they want you to come down to the office and sign out. I was like, sign out? I said, I don't go home for another, like, almost 30 days. You know what I mean? It was April 2nd. I go home in 27 days. So I'm like, I said, sir, why are you calling me so early to sign out? I'm not going home until the 29th. So he says, oh no, you're going home April 4th. You're going home on Thursday. I was like, and it was Tuesday. I said, sir, you serious right now? I'm going home 2 days from now? He was like, yeah.
The mistake that had been made with his release date had been fixed.
I mean, that's why things happen so fast, is when they finally realized it, they said, okay, wait a minute, he's going home Thursday.
Oh, I never really knew why.
Yeah.
Who was there when you walked out of the gate?
My mother was there, my ex-wife, my sons, my aunt, a friend of mine that drove her up there, my brother.
What was that drive up to Fishkill like? Before he even came out, what were you all talking about?
We were like the kid the day before Christmas. Like, it was so such excitement.
Travell's brother, Karan.
We just. And it means the world.
Did it feel surreal driving away?
Yes, it felt like, you know, because I had drove down that same road plenty of times, like going to a trip or going to medical trips, you know what I mean? That's the only time I really leave the facility, you know what I mean? So, you know, the ride down that same road, like, and knowing I'm not coming back, you know, knowing that I don't have to come back that day, you know, stuff like that, it was definitely surreal.
Steve, what is it like knowing that Travell is out now, home?
Well, Travell, I mentioned this to him. There's a group called the Clemency Collective, which is 22 people who receive clemency. And there's a planned meeting to kind of welcome the newest member of the collective, so which makes everybody pretty excited. But the other part of it is, and this is not to put a burden, I'm saying this with Travell right here, but, to the extent that it fits within his life to be sort of a spokesperson when the time comes, for clemency, for what it meant for him, for what it means for others. I'll say this other part too. When he got clemency, word spread so fast. And I don't mean everywhere actually, but in the legal community, people knew about it. The governor's office obviously knew that he got parole. So it sent a message, because he's known to people, right? And so him getting clemency and making parole, it reverberates. My hope is it opens the door a little bit for others.
Have these past 4 weeks been what you expected them to be, been what you thought about they would be when, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you were thinking, if there's a day when I'm out? Has it lived up to what you thought it would be?
Yes, I could say yes. I'm not gonna, I really didn't think about going home a lot, you know what I mean? Because I just, that's just not, healthy to do when you in there, because, you start thinking and you start getting anxious and, so I tried to just, from time to time, coming home did cross my mind, you know what I mean? And it was just a happy feeling, of like, wow, maybe one day this will be over, So for me to come home, it's that feeling manifested, So I feel the joy that I thought I would feel, When I first came home, it's definitely a difference. You notice that, wow, I'm able to, do certain things, some liberties are restored, but, it's kind of like riding a bike. Like, you really think, you never really forget how it is to just be able to just move,
What's it like to be with your sons and daughter? I mean, what, you talked about that and, being out with them, and have you gotten to spend a lot of time with them since?
I've got to spend not as much time as I would like, but like I would like to take a trip with them and go somewhere and, be able to relax and, wake up and be with them again, things like that. With the curfew that I have in the place where I'm staying, it's not, that's not really possible right now. I still gotta come home every night. Come back to that place every night. I haven't had a chance to really spend nights with them and stuff like that.
When that trip does happen, where do you want to take everyone?
I would like to go with my kids. I would like to take them to somewhere fun. I'm trying to get away from saying Disney World.
Are they too old for Disney World now?
Nah, nobody's ever too old for Disney World. So I'm probably going something like that. You know what I mean? I would want to take them to something like that. I also want to just experience things with them. Experience seeing different things. It doesn't have to be super exciting or anything. Just, maybe just seeing, a certain region or, something like that.
At his parole hearing last month, Travell submitted a personal statement. In it, he wrote, "By no means do I believe that I'm excused for taking Mr. Henkel's life. What I expect of myself is to be aware of the second chance at life I have been given, and to be an example of love, mercy, truth, and forgiveness." Criminal is created by Lauren Spohr and me. Nadia Wilson is our senior producer. Katie Bishop is our supervising producer. Our producers are Susanna Robertson, Jackie Sujiko, Lily Clark, Lena Sillison, and Megan Kinane. Our show is mixed and engineered by Veronica Simonet. Julian Alexander makes original illustrations for each episode of Criminal. You can see them at thisiscriminal.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter at thisiscriminal.com/newsletter. If you want even more Criminal, join Criminal Plus. You'll get bonus behind-the-scene episodes twice a month with even more stories. Like this week's episode about a man who planted 33 pipe bombs all over New York City and was finally caught using one of the first instances of criminal profiling. Plus, you can listen to all of our shows without any ads and get access to special events. To learn more, go to thisiscriminal.com/plus. We're on Facebook and Twitter @Criminal Show and Instagram @criminal_podcast. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/Criminal Podcast. Criminal is part of the Vox Media Podcast Network. Discover more great shows at podcast.voxmedia.com. I'm Phoebe Judge. This is Criminal. Thanks to Progressive for their support. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, and even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who switch to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
Going to be, which is how I felt 20 minutes into it. I've clearly sensed that it was as unwatchable as you expected it to be. Tell me what you thought about Unfrosted.
I'd seen the horizon and seen that it plunged into the dark. I want to take you back actually to December 2023, Orlando, Florida, giant football stadium. There's a person in a full-body Pop-Tart costume with a smiley face plastered on the front of it, standing on top of a gigantic, quote-unquote, toaster. It's not actually a toaster, but it looks like a toaster. It's huge. They're holding a sign that reads, "Dreams really do come true," and then they are proceeded to be lowered into the toaster while Donna Summer's Hot Stuff blasts over the speakers. An announcer yells, "What always love you, strawberry? Can't wait to eat you." And out of the toaster pops a giant actual Pop-Tart that's in the shape of a giant sheep egg that the Kansas State football team proceeds to eat. Now this was at the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm not saying that this Pop-Tart sacrifice in Orlando, Florida on a football stadium was more entertaining than Unfrosted, but I'm not saying that either.
Oh no, I would agree with that, especially like on average because it was super rich, because it was so short.
Oh yes, it's like a 2.5 minute video, and my God, that thing brought me way more pure joy than this movie ever could. Even in the moments where I was like, oh, it's kind of cool to see this random character actor who I loved and lots of other things, I was wondering, who is this for? Because I feel as though anyone under the age of 35 probably like doesn't know half of the jokes that are being told in here because it's set in the 60s and it's like a lot of the 60s, Vietnam, hippies, granola. I know. But then I'm like, well, who over the age of 35 is gonna like find any of this entertaining? It's just like, we've eaten cereal, but do we care this much about cereal? No.
I wanted to touch on one thing about this film. We've talked about how many people in this film are not only good comic performers, but good actors. Jerry Seinfeld is many things, but he's not good. And to have him sort of playing the like comedic lead in this film, I just found him so stiff.
Yeah, I am prepared to say, despite the fact that I know how many people will disagree, but I do think since Seinfeld ended, there's a lot of kind of talking about Jerry Seinfeld as like, what a great scholar of comedy, and I feel like I'm constantly being asked to admire how much Jerry Seinfeld thinks about comedy, but in the end, the result to me is just not there, other than the fact that he made one very successful sitcom, and certainly had a style like in the 90s.
was an enormously influential stand-up comedian.
Yeah, sure, of course. But I think since then, I don't know that there's much else in the tank.
He's also kind of entered into that sort of untouchable multi-millionaire phase. Like his whole thing of the last like 10-ish years has been comedians in cars getting coffee. And it's like there is nothing here that screams to me like this is of the moment comedy. This is like edgy in any way. And look, it seems like everyone in this movie seemed to have a fun time, but I don't know if anyone who actually watches this is gonna enjoy themselves half as much as they seem to be.
Yeah, well, and you know, I will say, I think that if this movie had 90 minutes of silly jokes, as good to me as the funeral sequence or a couple of the other things, I wouldn't expect it to necessarily be timely. I wouldn't necessarily expect it to be satire.
Yeah, I do find it interesting. He gave an interview, I think, with the Associated Press, and he was asked if this was at all sort of like influenced by all of these movies, these product movies, you know, your Airs, your Blackberries, and he said no, and he was like, well, I didn't realize it was part of a trend, and I'm like, I actually think that it would have been better had this movie been actually trying to take cues from these last 100, because that's kind of what I thought it was going to be. Kind of like, you know, not another teen movie or scary movie. It's like that kind of thing. And instead it's just like, the jokes are just so untargeted.
I sort of felt like this was going to buy back some of the time I've spent watching movies like Flamin' Hot and Air, where like, haha, we have finally reached a critical mass with this kind of product biopic where we're going to like puncture the formulas to the point where maybe people make fewer of them.
In my opinion, this entire movie should have been the labor dispute with the mascots.
Okay.
One, it had some of the best jokes. Two, it has Hugh Grant as Thurl Ravenscroft, which I do think is very funny, because Thurl Ravenscroft is a real guy, and that is funny to me. And three, because mascots are inherently funny, and you can show like mascots running around, mascots falling down, mascots taking their heads off. If they make Unfrosted 2 War of the Mascots, I am probably going to sit down and watch that whole thing.
That was Linda Holmes, Aisha Harris, and Stephen Thompson of NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Uma, a cloud-based phone service for any size business, with an automated virtual receptionist, video meetings, and other features to connect to customers and coworkers anywhere at uma.com/NPR. From Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks at progressivecommercial.com. From the NPR Wine Club, where members can explore wines from around the world, and every purchase supports NPR's high-quality journalism. Available to adults 21 or older. nprwineclub.org. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
Support comes from the University of Cincinnati's 1819 Innovation Hub, establishing vital connections between the university and industry, with a network of over 15 corporate partners, including Procter & Gamble, Alta Fiber, Western and Southern Financial Group, Corporate, Fifth Third Bank, Great American Insurance Group, and many others. More at innovation.uc.edu. WVXU is proud to connect you to your community, your country, and the world. With our trusted partners, NPR and the BBC, plus the award-winning WVXU News team, you can count on news that informs and enlightens. Keeping you connected in Cincinnati and beyond, 91.7 WVXU and 88.5 WMUB.
There's a wreck on Work Road in Boudinot, Vine and East Liberty, Central Parkway north of Findlay, and Martin Luther King Jr. Drive at Dick Smith. There's a wreck there.
This is 91.7 WVXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WMUB Oxford.
President Biden's latest move on the Middle East, pausing a bomb shipment to Israel, is drawing criticism from both GOP lawmakers and Democratic donors.
How's the Biden campaign navigating the tricky politics of the moment?
Today is Friday, May 10th, and this is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Ari Shapiro, ahead this hour, a U.S. airman was shot and killed last week by a sheriff's deputy in Florida.
Now his family is speaking out.
I know my son did not do anything to you guys. If he scared you or if you guys wasn't trained properly, I apologize.
Also, charged particles from the sun are barreling towards the Earth.
So are government scientists worried?
As far as I'm concerned, yeah, we're a little concerned in the fact we haven't seen it in such a long time.
In better news, Mary Louise, this geomagnetic storm will cause beautiful auroras visible across much of the U.S.
I'll take it. Who's next?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. Face-to-face negotiations for a temporary ceasefire and the release of hostages in Gaza have ended without agreement. NPR's Tamara Keith explains it comes as the White House expressed concerns with Israeli operations in the southern city of Rafah.
President Biden amped up his warning this week to Israel, saying it should not conduct major ground operations in Rafah, where more than 1 million civilians are sheltering. White House spokesman John Kirby says Israel has expanded operations there, but so far it is not yet the sort of full-scale offensive Biden warned against.
We urge them, as we have in the past, to be as careful, precise, and discriminate as they can here, so that they are not putting innocent lives at greater risk than they already are. But we're watching this very closely.
He said the breakdown in ceasefire talks is, quote, deeply regrettable. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
In a largely symbolic move, the 193-member UN General Assembly today voted overwhelmingly to adopt a resolution declaring that Palestinians qualify for statehood at the United Nations. The vote seen as a rebuke to Israel and the U.S. However, the vote by the body does not mean full member status will be happening anytime soon. One can only grant full membership with the approval of the UN Security Council. The U.S. would almost certainly veto that. The state of Louisiana is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in again on the state's map of congressional voting districts, and NPR's Hansi Wong reports.
The Supreme Court is already reviewing a similar request from a group of black Louisiana voters. They're asking the High Court to pause a lower court ruling so that the state's elections this year have a chance of using a congressional map that lawmakers crafted to be in line with the Voting Rights Act. The group and Louisiana officials are trying to defend the map the state's legislature passed in January with 2 majority black districts, which are likely to elect Democrats given how racially polarized voting is in Louisiana. But a 3-judge court blocked that map last week after finding one of those districts is unconstitutional because it's a racial gerrymander. This case could help determine which party controls the next Congress. Hansi Wong, NPR News.
The government is pouring millions of dollars into new efforts to control the spread of bird flu in the nation's cattle. This week, additional cases were found in dairy herds in Idaho, Michigan, and Colorado. Will Stone has more.
Over the past month, federal agencies have faced criticism for not being more responsive to the outbreak. The new funds will go toward a number of initiatives. Dairy farmers will get a few $1,000s for providing protective equipment and having their workers participate in federal studies. They will be reimbursed for veterinarian costs, and there may also be compensation for losses in milk production. Health officials have said farmers are sometimes reluctant to work with public health authorities on the outbreak. In addition, there will be just over $100 million for improving surveillance, testing, and other biosecurity measures. Will Stone, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professionals, committed to acting in their clients' best interests. Learn more at letsmakeaplan.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Good afternoon. It's 5:04, 68 degrees in Cincinnati, 66 degrees in Dayton. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Bill Reinhardt. Governors of Ohio and Kentucky say the states have received key federal approval for the Brent Spence Bridge corridor revamp. Governors DeWine and Beshear report the Federal Highway Administration has wrapped up its environmental review, allowing the project to advance to design and construction. According to a release, the administration's ruling is based on assessments of the social, economic, and environmental effects of the project, as well as measures to mitigate unavoidable impacts. It also took into account public input. The project was already slated to be completed without tolls. These approvals ensure that will still be the case. Kentucky's annual elk hunt drawing takes place tomorrow as part of the Kentucky Elk and Outdoor Fest in Bardstown. John Hast is Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources Bear and Elk Program Coordinator. He says they received more than 77,000 applications for 3 types of permits.
Folks have the option to choose from a bull gun tag, a cow gun tag, or either sex archery tag, so you can do a pick 3. We'll be drawing 500 permits this year.
Hess says a recently concluded 5-year study with the elk population in Kentucky at just over 10,000. The one will be held at Kentucky Gun Company in Bardstown and live streamed. The Crone Conservatory's annual butterfly show this year is inspired by space experiments. In 2009, 2 species, monarchs and painted ladies, were taken to the International Space Station to see how they would adapt in a weightless environment. Crone manager Mark Hell says those 2 species are among 85 flying around the greenhouse.
We have up to 85 different species. That's what our permits allow, from all over the world, every color of the rainbow. Some of the most popular ones are the blue morphos, which are big blue Central American butterflies. The owl butterflies, the caligos, they look like they have a big eye on them that scares away predators.
The butterfly show opens tomorrow at the Crone Conservatory in Eden Park. It runs through August. It's 68 degrees.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. We are now inside 6 months and counting until Election Day. And as both the Trump and Biden campaigns prepare to hit the summer running, there's plenty to keep them busy in the meantime. Donald Trump spent much of this week in court for his New York hush money trial. Joe Biden has been dealing, among other things, with the war in Gaza and how much influence the U.S. has over how Israel conducts that war. Well, NPR is tracking both campaigns closely. We're taking a moment now to check in with Michael Tyler, Communications Director for the Biden-Harris campaign. We have reached him at campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. Michael Tyler, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
On the Middle East, as you know, President Biden announced this week he will halt further shipments of American bombs to Israel if Israel launches a major ground invasion in Rafah. I want to ask about the impact on the campaign, because some of your campaign's biggest donors are furious about that. How are you thinking about the politics here?
Well, listen, I think the most important thing to point out is that Joe Biden is not thinking about the politics here. He does not approach this situation through the lens of politics. He approaches it through the lens of our commander-in-chief. And the things that are most important to him is that Israel has a right to defend itself in the aftermath of the attack on October 11th. But we must also do everything we can to protect innocent Palestinian life. And that's what he has made clear. That's what he's acting on.
Understood, but when you have people like Democratic mega donor Haim Saban emailing White House officials saying bad decision on all levels, please reconsider, does that have an impact?
No, because the president is not focused on this through the lens of politics. I think what the American people are going to see is a president who's serving as commander-in-chief, who has the temperament, the judgment to manage complex global conflicts like the one that's playing out right now. We are going to present that against our opponent, who had a chance to power and demonstrated neither the temperament nor the competence to manage conflicts like that. And so that's the choice that we are going to present to the American people, between a president who is focused on the substance and solving problems, and our opponent who would be approaching this through the North Star of what's in his own personal self-interest. We're confident that the American people are going to side with Joe Biden on that.
Let me turn you to younger voters, student activists. These are the same politically engaged, involved students who I'm sure you wish were out there knocking on doors for you. Instead, many are protesting the president's policies on college campuses across the country. How are you working to pull these younger voters in?
Well, yeah, I think first, number one, I think you heard from the president directly who spoke about the fact that there's always a place for peaceful protest, that people have a fundamental right to voice their concerns and voice their opinions. He believes firmly in the right to free speech and for all Americans to peacefully demonstrate and have their voices heard. And so I do think that stands in stark contrast to our opponent. But as it relates to young voters overall, we're going to make that clear on this issue. We're also going to make sure that we communicate the totality of the stakes of this election for young voters. Young voters are telling us that they care about protecting abortion rights, about curbing gun violence in this country, about combating climate change, as the president has done, and relieving the loan burden of student debt. These are all things that the president has fought on. These are all things that stand, again, in kind of stark contrast to Donald Trump when he had power, who was in the pocket of the gun lobby, who did nothing to combat climate change. We're seeing him talking about doing whatever the hell the big oil lobby wants to do if they contribute to his campaign. So again, for young folks, we are going to make sure that they have a president who is listening to them and is fighting on their behalf right now and will continue to do so for another 4 years.
When you say he's listening to them, are these protesters having an impact in how the president thinks about the war?
Again, as I said before, the president is not thinking about this conflict through the lens of politics. He's approaching it as the commander-in-chief of this country. And I think that's something that the American people appreciate. That's why they elected him in the first place. And it's why they will vote for Joe Biden again in November and reject a candidate like Donald Trump, who would only think through issues like this and every issue that crosses his desk insofar as what's in his own personal self-interest.
And just quickly, big picture, Americans are tired. A lot of people have already made up their minds. What issues do you believe are actually in play that will motivate people to get out of buildings?
Yeah, I think this election is going to be a fundamental choice between who is fighting to protect, defend, and advance our fundamental freedoms in our very democracy and an economy, whether we want to have one that continues to grow from the middle out, the bottom up, or return to the top-down approach that Donald Trump had. And that's going to be the fundamental choice that we present to the American people.
Michael Tyler.
If we present that choice, they're going to side with Joe Biden and once again
Michael Tyler
Donald Trump.
Of the Biden campaign. We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Florida investigators are looking into a fatal shooting last Friday involving a deputy and a black United States Airman. But as Adrian Andrews from member station WFSU reports, there are still unanswered questions about who was in the wrong.
Body camera footage shows the moment an Okaloosa County Sheriff deputy shot 23-year-old Roger Fortson. Fortson later died in the hospital. He was a special mission aviator in the U.S. Air Force and was staying at his off-base apartment in Fort Walton Beach. His mother, Mika Fortson, described her child as a loving and hardworking person.
My shelf, my counselor, my provider, my baby was my everything.
Okaloosa County Sheriff Eric Eden says the deputy who shot Fortson was responding to a disturbance call made by one of Fortson's neighbors. In the body cam footage, you can see one woman directing the deputy to Fortson's unit.
Which room is it? 1401. 1401, okay.
Fortson was alone in his apartment FaceTiming with his girlfriend when the deputy approached his door. The camera briefly shows the apartment number as 1401. He proceeds to knock on the door twice.
Sheriff's office, open the door!
As Fortson opens the door, you can see him holding a gun downward in his right hand. The deputy yells for Fortson to step back before shooting him multiple times. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who's representing Fortson's family, notes Fortson was a senior airman with combat experience. He says he did not hear the deputy announce himself and grab his gun for his own protection. The deputy's claim of self-defense, he says, doesn't hold.
You put out this narrative demonizing his name as if he did something wrong.
Okaloosa Sheriff pushed back on Crump's comments, saying he wants to remain transparent. The deputy has been placed on administrative leave. Roger's mom, Mika, says her son did nothing wrong and alleges the deputy and the sheriff's office need better training to ensure people are kept safe.
I know my son did not do anything to you guys. If he scared you or if you guys wasn't trained properly, I apologize.
This investigation is ongoing. Florida's Department of Law Enforcement is handling the case. Once complete, the state attorney's office will determine further action. For NPR News, I'm Adrian Andrews in Tallahassee.
Montreal versus Boston is a classic hockey rivalry. Well, we're talking about the men anyway. And this very first season of the professional women's hockey league is following suit. Last night, Boston and Montreal met in the playoffs.
Looking for a chance, and she scores! Susanna Tammany, the hero in overtime, and Boston wins Game 1.
Well, to check in on the league on and off the ice, we turn now to Carissa Donkin. She reports on the PWHL for CBC Sports. Carissa, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Okay, so the playoffs, as we just heard, Boston beat Montreal in Game 1. That's one matchup. We also have Minnesota playing Toronto. The semifinals are the best 5. Briefly, how did these particular teams get here?
So this is the first season of the league. It's a brand new league. We've got 6 teams in total. 4 of them made the playoffs, and this league does things a little bit differently from some of the other major sports leagues across North America. Notably, the team that finished first they actually get to pick their opponent among the 3rd and the 4th seeded teams. So,
and just to note that the number 1 team was Toronto, right?
Yeah, so they actually had 24 hours where they had to decide between playing Minnesota or playing Boston, and then they announced their decision. So that's kind of fun.
Give us a cheat sheet if there were a couple of key players we should keep an eye on in these playoffs. Who would they be?
Yeah, the big name on Toronto is Natalie Spooner. So she finished first overall in the league in both goals and points. And if we look at Minnesota, someone I would keep an eye on is Taylor Heisey. She was the first overall draft pick in the very first PWHL draft last fall. And if we look at Boston and Montreal, Marie-Philippe Poulet is the captain of Montreal. She's been the face of women's hockey here in Canada for a long time, arguably the best player in the world. And she's facing off against Hillary Knight, who's the captain of Boston, and has been one of the faces of women's hockey in the United States for a long time.
And then back to the question of this first season, how it's gone in a league that came together really quickly. The teams still don't have logos or mascots, is that right?
That's right. They don't have team names or logos. That's something they're still working on. Yeah.
But the first season has gone well. What kind of decisions have they made in terms of structure?
I mean, I think it's safe to say it's exceeded everyone's expectations. You know, on the fan interest side, we've seen world record shatter for attendance. Just last month, we had the Bell Center, which is the biggest hockey arena in North America, packed to see Montreal take on Toronto. There's been a ton of interest for, viewership on television. They're streaming the games on YouTube, which they've seen a ton of people tune into that. But I think they've launched at really the perfect time because it's not necessarily unique to women's hockey what's going on right now. I think there's just a voracious appetite for women's sport all across the world right now.
So what's your elevator pitch to somebody who has not watched the professional women's hockey league yet?
I think you're missing out. It's such fast, skilled hockey. I mean, I think the women's game has always been so fast and skilled. But it's also probably more physical, maybe, than what you've seen before. I mean, women's hockey's always been physical, but for a long time, one of the things you'd hear people say is, oh, I don't watch women's hockey because there's no hitting. Well, that's certainly not true. There's definitely hitting in this league. You'll see that very quickly if you watch a playoff game. And I think for folks who tune in once every 4 years around the Olympics, I mean, these are the same players that you see at the Olympics. They're just wearing different jerseys.
That is Carissa Donkin with CBC Sports. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Coming up on WVXU, Secretary of State Antony Blinken released a report that's highly critical of the way Israel is carrying out its war in Gaza. But it doesn't say Israel has broken the rules for using U.S. weapons. More on that story coming up at 5:35 during All Things Considered on 91.7 WVXU.
Music lovers, Radio Artifact is Cincinnati's home for local music and is now available through your Amazon. Enable the Radio Artifact skill and ask Alexa to open Radio Artifact. Support comes from Northern Kentucky University's Art Prep program. This summer, you can ignite your curiosity and nurture creativity at NKU's July Art Workshops, offering engaging community and continuing education programs suitable for all skill levels and ages, 13 to adult. For full details, visit art.nku.edu.
Support for WVXU and WMUV comes from sustaining members like you and from GoBus, offering bus service 365 days a year with service between Cincinnati to Athens, Columbus, Cleveland, and beyond. More details available at ridegobus.com or 888-95-GO-BUS.
Support comes from the UC Center for Business Analytics, presenting Applied Power BI online with live instructor May 21st through 30th. Master Power BI from data acquisition and modeling to creating compelling visualizations and reports. Familiarity with Power BI required. Information at business.uc.edu/Power BI.
This traffic report is supported by the Ohio Utilities Protection Service. Southbound 71 on the ramp to southbound 7175, there's a broken down vehicle. Eastbound 275 after Princeton Pike, a wreck on the left shoulder. There's one eastbound 275 at Montgomery Road. From 9, first warning weather, turning cloudy, 49 tonight, rain likely tomorrow morning, then partly cloudy and 68. 69 degrees now. This is 91.7 WVXU.
Support for NPR comes from this station And from Bank of America, offering access to resources and digital tools designed to help local to global companies make moves for their
Go.